So today's video is one that I've been promising you guys for probably a year and a half now or something along those lines. It's been a while and I have promised that I would make this video, and every time I went to make this video it was so far off from what you guys would be doing on your cars that it just didn't make sense to do a how-to or an install video on it. So today I'm going to be showing you guys how to install an IAG AOS. This is going to be pretty much the exact same from 2002 up to 2021 for WRX and STI, with the exception of the FA20 DITs, because those install a little bit differently. So for the most part, this AOS is going to install the exact same. There may be some electrical connectors that are a little bit different from year to year, but for the most part, this will give you a general idea of where to route things and how things go. So first of all, I'd like to give a shout out over to our friends over at the Mod Garage for supplying us with one of these units and helping out with the build. If you guys own a WRX, it's not even an option. Like, this is what you need. Like, you have to have this. If you're not going to be running an air oil separator, you at minimum need a catch can in these cars. These cars like to consume oil. Any turbocharged car likes to consume oil, but Subarus in particular are very finicky about this. So before we jump over here and we start playing, this is the Street Series AOS, by the way, and by the way, I will link the Mod Garage info to, if you guys are looking for parts, down below in the description. But for the most part, this is 100% needed. I would like to note that this install will not be directly following IAG's instructions, but it will give you the general gist of what we need to get going on here. So the first thing that we need to do before we even try to get this AOS in here is we're going to relocate this engine harness bracket. This little black bracket that this is on, we're going to remove that out of the car. Let's start things off easy. Let's get that harness relocated so that way we can get our AOS fitted up, start getting lines ran, and get this thing installed. Step one, take out the 10 mils that hold the bracket right here. Alright, both of those are out. Now this bracket should come loose. And on the bottom of this, we're gonna need a pick. And you're gonna take your screwdriver, you're gonna just move the little tab that's underneath of it, and after that tab is moved out of the way, you should be able to slide this bracket right out. Now that I've got mine started, there's also a zip tie right here. You can either go ahead and just push this guy through or just cut the zip tie. I'm just gonna cut it. Cut that zip tie. Be careful not to use a razor blade, and if you do, just be gentle. And then this bracket right here will slide out. We're not going to be reusing this, so you can go ahead and set that guy aside. In your IAG kit, you're going to get one of these silver brackets. The silver bracket is going to slide in from the side on the engine harness connector and push right in. Now you've got this hole here. What we're going to do is move this whole harness forward, and we're going to set it up on this power steering bracket here. We'll tuck this harness down there so that way it's out of our way. So we can go ahead and get that 10 mil out of the way now. Moved. We can come right here, slide it through our bracket. This one's not taped up surprisingly all that much, so I don't really think we need to cut the tape. On some of the STIs, you gotta cut the tape. That got tightened down. We can go ahead and just tuck this harness down like that a little bit. And then I like to bend these just kind of like that, so that way it gives us a little bit more clearance. And now that we've got our engine harness relocated, we have space for the AOS. Look at that. Look at all that room we got right there now. Before we just go jumping the AOS in, next up, let's get the top mount intercooler off this thing. A couple different ways you can go about removing the intercooler. I'm gonna come in here, grab this spring clamp, which can be a little bit of a pain, move it back and slide the hose off of the bypass valve like that. So we're off the bypass valve. Yeah, I can see oil in the bypass valve, so that's how I know we're consuming oil. Undo this 12 right here for the top mount intercooler bracket. Here, undo the two 12 mils for the intercooler to turbo. That weren't even tight. That's stripped. Did the last owner be a dick and strip this? Oh, he did. What a nub. Move that guy there. We'll grab our 8mm here and undo the hose clamp for the turbo. And then lastly, pull off the bypass valve line. All right, and then this whole intercooler should just pull right up and off like that. What a nub, dude. I was probably having such a big boost leak. Let me guess, stripped out the turbo, didn't he? Hell yeah, he did, boy. Next up, there's a small Pcv breather line right under this expansion tank here, which goes down to the cylinder head. So if you go down to the cylinder head, it's gonna be the forwardmost port on it. Grab the spring clamp, pull up on that spring clamp. You can come back here, grab this spring clamp, up on it like that. So this is gonna be what you're looking for. It's gonna go to a white PCV connector like that. I'm gonna come right here. You're just gonna take off the hose. So this hose, set aside. Now we gotta get the passenger side one off. An easy way to locate these is look for the white connector and follow the white connector down to the cylinder head, and that'll show you where they're at. With that being said, I might need to grab some longer pliers to get down here a little bit easier, but I think I can do it with these normal ones. I definitely was able to. I'm right here, yeet up on it, and then there is our second one. And then we'll undo this clamp like we did the first one, and then we can take this hose out of the car. Both PCV breathers for the heads are out of the car now. This one's gonna be a little bit hard to show you guys, so I'm gonna show you the location of this first. Right down here, if this is your VF52, your turbo, if you go inwards towards the center of the engine, here's your pitch stop. Right here is gonna be the next PCV connector. We are going to disconnect the PCV connector on this side right here that I'm pointing to. We're gonna disconnect that spring clamp and get that guy out of there. So let me do that real quick, and then I'll show you what we're doing next. Figured I'd show you that one before I go to do it because it's a little difficult to see. Secondary air pump connector that's like right in the way, so I gotta snake this guy down there and try to pop off this fucking guy. There we go, just like that. And then I should be able to, yep, just pull up on it. And then once it's pulled up on, you guys will see the white connector right there. All right, interestingly enough, it looks like we're removing this hose entirely from the car because IAG says to cap off the hard line right here. So we're gonna go ahead and pop that off the hard line. And then for this electrical connector, I'm guessing I'm just going to disconnect it. They give you a cap. They say to cap off the hard line. The cap that IAG gave us is definitely not the right size. It's whatever, I think I have another one. What does this go to? Like, can I just delete this hard pipe in general? Like, what do you do? So I'm veering off the path a little bit here. I took out the hard line. This is kind of a pointless line in my opinion because the AOS is gonna replace that. There's no sense in capping that off if I'm just not gonna be using it. Rather take it out of the car. To get that thing out, it's really not bad. Disconnect the turbo inlet bolt here. There's one more that you disconnect there, then you can move this bracket around. All these sensors will just bolt back up to it. You're gonna end up moving this wire harness out of the way. All of this bolts to the back side of the intake manifold right here. There's 2 bolt holes on this guy. Actually, there's 2. One right there and one right there. You're gonna disconnect this hose on that end from the turbo inlet. That's one that we disconnected earlier. That's the line that they wanted us to cap off on the other side. So now that that's out of the car, we have some loose PCV connections. Now I'm gonna show you guys. These white connectors here, what we're going to do is we're going to take that little metal jumper, full focus, we're gonna take the little metal piece out of there, we're gonna stick it in the electrical connector and tape it up, and then just tuck them out of the way. That'll take care of that. But we'll do that here in a little bit. Let's keep going on the instructions. We hypothetically just capped off that one plug over here. Off of that white PCV connector down here that I showed you guys earlier, we're gonna go in here, we're gonna pull off the PCV assembly that goes to the block. Normally I just stick a pair of pliers in it and yeet it up. We're gonna replace it anyway. Comes up pretty easy. Just like that. Dude, I got it, let go. There we go, sick. So our PCV valve assembly is out. That was a pain. All right, so we have our PCV hose out of the block. I can see the block breather right there, and there's a leaf right next to it, so I'm gonna grab that leaf. All right, next up, you're gonna go to your bag of goodies that IAG sent you, and you're gonna grab this Y fitting and this like stubby little thick hose boy. Now, I'm gonna tell you this. They give you these clamps. There's no way in hell you're getting that clamp on the bottom one that goes to the block. Get a zip tie, put the zip tie on there to start it, get it down on the block breather, and then cut the zip tie tail after you've tightened it down. There's literally no way at all to get this clamp on unless you have the engine out of the car or you have some like super specialty tool. It's just not gonna happen, I promise you that. So let's get this guy shoved onto the block breather. We're gonna orientate this so that way this Y piece comes off facing the firewall of the car. We're gonna angle it just slightly. Once I get it in, I'll show you guys the best I can. There's like no room down there to show you guys. Actually, I have a spare engine over there. Let me get this on there, and then I'll kind of show you guys where it goes. Having the engine in the car, there's no way at all. One way to make sure it's all the way in the block is you can take a pair of pliers, put it in the plastic fitting. Don't jam it in, but you can use it to kind of help you push down on it and wiggle it on, just to make sure that everything seats properly. I will say that this is a lot easier to fit in here than an STI, because with the STI, you've got the turbo like straight up in the way, but nope, we have our drain back on there. I do have a feeling that's going to leak a small amount of oil. I'm not too concerned about it. This block is not the permanent one that's going in, and we will be building one in the future for this. So there's literally no way at all. You can fight with the zip tie method to try to get a zip tie on there. I've done it before. It's a pain in the ass and it doesn't really do much, but it's better than nothing, I guess. On WRX and STI, this is gonna be in the exact same spot. Your block breather is going to be right down there. Like, boop. Right next to the turbo, right by this turbo support bracket here. Let me show you on an engine that's out of the car because it's gonna be a lot easier to show you. So this is your EJ that's in the car. This breather fitting here is the one that it goes on. And you're gonna have to orientate it so that way that Y piece comes off like this. So that way you're able to get the drain hose from the AOS back to that guy. So now that we've got our block breather oil drain put back in there, we can progress forward. So next up, we're gonna start getting some hoses onto this AOS and start assembling this. So we need to get the drain hose on. That's gonna be this bottommost hose here. Now you're gonna want the 1/2 inch by 26 inch long hose. The way you're gonna know that is you're gonna have a tape measure and you're gonna measure it. It's 1/2 inch by 26. You're gonna go ahead and take one of the spring clamps that's provided for this size. I found that like the wider the pliers, the better if you don't have this like specific plier set, because IAG's hose clamps suck ass. They always have. So slide that guy onto the drain. I'll rotate that guy around a little bit and then slide this clamp up onto the bar. Like I said, the wider the pliers you have, the better. Trying to do this with needle nose, it's just, you're gonna hate your life more than I hate my life using it with wide pliers. Then I'm gonna go ahead and get the other hose clamp started on the other end to make my life easier. We are going to be trimming this down, but doing this off the car will save you a lot of frustration. So just slide it down the hose there. Now we grab the bracket. Much fun. So we've got our little bracket that IAG gives us. It's got 3 holes on one side, 2 holes on the other side. And then they give you 3 Allen screws and 2 10mm. Now that 3 Allens are gonna be what screws into the AOS. The 2 10s are gonna go into the firewall. So you can go ahead and rotate your AOS around right like so. And I'll show you guys the orientation on this after I get it tightened down. You don't need to like send them to the moon, but just like honestly hand tight is totally fine. So to show you guys the bracket, it's gonna go on the forwardmost side, 1 hole left on the bottom with the 2 facing downward like that. So now that we've got this done, we're ready to get this AOS mounted up in the car. So we can grab our air oil separator here. I think I need to adjust mine to have it sit a little bit lower. Now I can tighten this guy back down. You just gotta make sure you're clearing the cowl up here. All right, next up we have coolant lines, which are these 2 here. Now I see a lot of people confused about these because there's like, I don't know which line goes where. It doesn't matter. These lines can go either which way you want. So we're gonna be taking the coolant line off of right here on the top of the coolant reservoir. If you look here, it'll go straight down to the turbo there. You're gonna lose coolant. Just grab some rags, toss them down there. It's not the end of the world. If you have spare coolant, just top it off when you're done and you'll be totally fine. So I think I'm gonna have this closer line go to the turbo, this closer line to the reservoir, go to the reservoir. I'm gonna get these kind of pre-cut. I like to leave a little bit of slack on these if I can. Then we'll take one of these sleeves and slide it over this guy. Slide it all the way down, just to protect these coolant lines from the turbo heat shield. So now I know that line's gonna go right about there roughly, so I can go ahead and cut it. If you don't have a pair of these hose cutters, I will link them down below. They are a lifesaver. Like I said, leave yourself a little bit of excess if you can. I'm going to go ahead and clamp off this upper line so that way I lose less coolant, because coolant and I seem to like to make messes for some odd reason. I'll grab these hose pliers. I will also link hose pliers down below too, because they are also a massive lifesaver. And then we're gonna go ahead and steal the OEM clamp. I like the OEM clamps. I don't like the ones that IAG provides. You can use whatever one that you prefer. And slide this hose up and all the way on, and then put my clamp back down. Now we gotta do the same thing for that lower one. Yep, there it is. And get our clamp on. I don't think I leaked as much as I thought I did. Nah, I didn't leak too much. Now, like I said, I like to leave a little bit of excess on these so that way I can maneuver them around. If I have to trim them again later, I can. And then I'm gonna grab a couple zip ties and kind of zip tie these 2 together so that way they're not flopping all about. And with these coolant lines, you also want to try to avoid having any like super sharp bends in them if you can. You also don't want the zip ties to be resting on the heat shield. You can avoid it. Coolant lines are done. It's kind of stupid how that coolant line goes compared to an STI, but you know, if it works, it works. Now this next part's gonna be a little bit annoying because you remember that fitting that we shoved down here on the block? Now it's time to get a hose in there. So this hose here that goes to the bottom of the AOS, we're gonna make it go underneath this AC line, wrap up and around. It's gotta go through the hole in that bracket right there that it doesn't wanna focus on, and then onto that Y fitting with that clamp. So let me shove this guy through there, mark where I want it, cut it, and then we're gonna noodle that guy to get the AOS drain hose back on there. All right, now if you have a silver Sharpie, it'll probably be your best friend in this moment. So we got that guy pulled off, and then this guy is going to go down, go around. Cool, let's put a piece of heat shielding over this. I don't need it to go all the way, I just need like that much. And now we gotta shove it onto that Y fitting that we have down here. There we go, now what's going on. So we have our AOS drain hose coming off, going down around, down to the block breather with the clamp on there. So we have 2 coolant lines done and the drain line done, which is solid. Now you need to grab the 5/8 block breather hose, measure out 2 inches and cut 2 inches off 2 inches, and then we're going to bloop, push it right on there. And then get 2, or yeah, we can get 2 clamps on there, why not? I'm talking about, man, these clamps suck. We're going to take the other piece, or another clamp, and we're going to slide it over the long portion of the hose to make our lives easier. Right on there, then we can slide that clamp back down. And then we're gonna take another clamp, get it on this small 2-inch piece, just to prep it. Now, we can meander back to the car with our newly assembled hose. And then this guy, there's only one port that this will fit on, and that is the bottommost port, so you really can't mess it up. There we go. I'm just gonna leave it at the length it's at, so that way, if I need to trim it or move it later, or kind of scoot it out of the way for the intercooler, we have access to do so. So let me throw a clamp on this, let's get it on there. Oh my God, dude, there's like a coolant clamp and all sorts of shit in the way. I can push it out of the way and then slide this hose on. It'll be solid. Real big pain in the ass, but it's on. Jesus Christ, man. 10 out of 10, don't recommend. So the issue that you're gonna run into with this block breather here is right here you've got the barometric pressure sensor, which is in the way, and the turbo is like right in the way. So there's like no room to be able to get this hose onto that Y fitting that you put on there. I found if you plug in the barometric pressure sensor and then take a pair of like long pliers or a long screwdriver and push that fitting forward, you can slide the hose on, get the clamp on, and it'll stay there. It's just a really, really tight fit, but 4 lines down, 4 to go. Look at that, we're halfway there, you guys. Now here's where things are gonna differ a little bit, you guys, from what IAG tells you to do and what I'm doing. So, you remember that hose that we took off from the valve cover and whatnot? This hose here, so what we're gonna do is we're just gonna pull off that hose. We're not even gonna use that, that's gonna go over there. That white connector, inside of here, if you take a pair of needle nose pliers, grab onto it, you're going to find a little silver jumper. Now with that little silver jumper, that one electrical connector that used to be on the PCV, what you're gonna do is plug in the little jumper into that electrical connector like that. Now I'm gonna grab some electrical tape and tape this up. We're just gonna tuck it out of the way, so that way we don't have to have those white connectors everywhere. Now here's what I'm gonna tell you. If you live in California, don't do what I'm doing. Keep the connectors and just plug the hose directly into that. So we have this one taped up. I'm going to tuck it out of the way so I never see it again, and it's out of my life, and it lives down there now. Cool? Cool. Which is going to be right here. So we're just going to pop that little black piece off, toss that. I'm gonna come right here, grab our jumper, pull it out, toss the white piece, grab you, and plug you in like so. Grab a piece of electrical tape. So you're gonna go ahead and grab the longest hose that you have that is provided in the kit that is 1/2 inch. We're gonna go ahead, pop open one of these clamps, slide it over one of the ends. Cool. We're gonna toss this hose over to that side of the car. We're gonna shove this on the topmost port of the air oil separator. There's different ways to route this stuff, you guys. This is just how I like to route them. Rotate, yeah, you don't need it so tight that it's like crushing the hose either. You just need it to hold the hose up. That's all you're trying to achieve here. We'll zip tie the rest down here in a minute. Now we're gonna jump over to the other side of the car. Now, welcome to the other side of the car. Over here, you'll remember that we took off one of the hoses that go to the valve cover right there. I can see it. What we're gonna do is we're gonna route this hose down. You can route it however you want. We're gonna go underneath of the brake booster. The brake booster hose, I guess I should say. Have it come down in front of the master cylinder, and then it'll go down and sit on top of the engine right there. Now, if you did not do the jumper trick that I showed you earlier, you are going to connect this hose up to your stock PCV guide. Now we're gonna grab our clamp, get our clamp started on this, test fit, and see if we need to trim it up. These ones, typically, you can go ahead and slide the clamp down and force the hose on, so that way you're not trying to fight to get it down there, because it can be a little bit of a pain. Wiggle it around a little bit and it will go on, I promise. Driver's side, valve cover breather hose going up to the AOS. Super easy. That's why I deleted that hard pipe going across. I'm like, why am I keeping this? The AOS is deleting it. There's no point. No point in capping it off and just running it as is. It's kind of dumb. So, I mean, I know why they did it. It's just, you know what I mean. A hose clamp put onto a hose here. And this is just the remainder of the hose that we used from the other side. We'll slide that onto the middle port and then get that hose clamped down and slid on. Like I said, you guys, half of your install is going to be dealing with these clamps. Mimic that hose and then go down here. Notice with an AOS, there's a lot of hoses, and it does seem a little scary to install if it's your first time, but I promise it's really not that bad. Once you figure out how the PCV system works, it's really not bad. Because then you can just kind of do what I'm doing and do it your preferred way. Like, this is the way that IAG used to have you do it, was to jump those breathers and whatnot. Now they don't. So we've got both of our valve cover breathers done going to our AOS. We've got the oil drain line, the coolant lines. Now all we have left are two that are going to go back to the turbo inlet and one that's going to go to the intake manifold. And the one that goes to the intake manifold is a really easy one. That is going to be a line that is already made for you. Now I forgot which way the direction of flow is on this. There is an arrow on this little white part, so let me actually look at my phone real quick, see what the direction of flow is. So yeah, the arrow on the check valve is to point towards the intake manifold. So with that, the arrow is going to the intake manifold. Slide that guy on. Legit only one open barb on the bottom of the intake manifold, so it's kind of hard to miss. A little bit of a pain to get on though, because you got like wires and shit all going up in the... All we have left is two hoses, guys, and that's these two right here that are gonna go to the intake manifold, or the turbo inlet. And this is where things are gonna vary a little bit, because I removed that stock crossover hose. But for the most part, it should be pretty similar. We've got one fitting here, which I think I'm just gonna pull out and jump that fitting like I did the other ones. And then we've got another one up here on the turbo inlet, right down there underneath all this bracketry and whatnot, to get another one on. So it doesn't matter which one or which spot goes where. It's gonna be the same on both sides, so let's shove them on. Let's do it, let's do the thing. This breather line here, I have this going down to the stock line that used to go to the white connector down there. The other one that came off of the hard line that we took out that ran across the back of the manifold went up here under the turbo inlet underneath all that evap stuff. I put a cap on that so that way that is not venting. So that way this line and that, they don't need to communicate. We have this line here that does it all. It's just going to the turbo inlet to take care of all of that. This line here is the breather for the intake manifold that goes down underneath the intake manifold. This top uppermost line on the AOS here is going to run over to the valve cover on that side. The middle hose on the AOS will run to the valve cover on the passenger side. The bottommost hose out of these three is going to go to the block breather down there by the turbo, the one that we fought with earlier. Oil drain is also going to go down there to the Y fitting. And then both your coolant lines are going to go either up here to the coolant expansion tank and to the turbo right here. It doesn't matter which line you put where for those coolant lines. So now that we have our AOS installed in here, let me run through. I have to retap one of the holes for the turbo because whoever had the car before me decided to completely demolish the threads in there. So I'm gonna retap that one hole, get the intercooler back on here. We will get the everything bolted back up. All right, we are all put back together. All cleaned up except for that one bolt that I never put back in right here, but you know what? That's totally fine, I guess, because I didn't really need it anyways. So, let's turn this thing on and see if we have any check engine lights and see if it runs smooth, which I'm presuming it will. I don't see any reason why it wouldn't. So far, so good. Let me let it idle for a couple minutes. All right, my friends, it is the next day. It got a little bit dark and I wanted to run through these hoses with you guys one more time before I end this video, but the AOS is installed. The car runs beautifully. I had one vacuum leak off of the bypass valve that goes to the intake manifold, so I take the intercooler back off, put that back on and zip tie it on. But we're all solid now. So with our AOS here, once again, we'll run through these lines. This line here is going to go down and it is going to connect over to the turbo inlet here underneath of the manifold. I just have this connected up to the stock line. This line here is also going to go down to the bottom of the intake manifold near the throttle body. That is going to be the check valve. On the topmost line back there, this line here goes to the driver's side valve cover. The middle one is going to go to the passenger side valve cover. The bottommost line with the 90-degree T that we did is going to come up around and go down to the block breather. The bottommost line underneath of that one that's like way down there is going to be the oil drain. That's going to go to that Y fitting that we have down there. Both of the coolant lines are interchangeable. You can have one go to the, well, one needs to go to this upper coolant reservoir here. One needs to go down to the turbo down there. It doesn't matter what line you put where, they are interchangeable lines. Remember, you are going to have to move this wire harness here, get it out of the way. But aside from that, an AOS it's super easy to install, you guys. If you don't feel comfortable doing it the way that I did it, because I have one of the ports on the turbo inlet blocked off, as well as one of the ports on the AOS blocked off. I don't need both of them, I only need one. So this, like I said, if you don't feel comfortable doing it this way, because I deleted the stock crossover tube out of here, this guy here that we're just not using anymore, and I also removed all of the PCV checked valve type deal, the blow-by sensors, and I just jumped them in the engine bay. No check engine lights, nothing like that. We are all good. So if you feel comfortable doing it this way, you can do it this way. If you want to stick to IAG's or Cobb's instructions, you can totally do so. Now, if you are one of my friends down in California, California, the IAG one, I wouldn't suggest this one. I'd suggest getting the Cobb one because it is carb certified. I believe it is. It actually is carb certified, I want to say. So get the Cobb one if you're in California. I want to say it's a little bit more money. You're paying for the carb certificate on top of the AOS. So that's all I got for you guys on this one. I hope this video kind of helped you guys. Like I said, I install my AOSs a little bit different. This is similar to how you used to install them by tricking the blow-by sensors. You don't necessarily have to do it that way. That's just the way that I prefer to do it. So if this video helped you, go ahead and hit that like button, turn it black, blue, green, yellow, purple, silver sign, whatever color it turns for you. And if you're not already subscribed to the channel and you want to be one of these corners, no idea which one I'll put it in quite yet, but with that, I will catch you guys in the next one. So peace out, homies. Woo!